Hello and welcome to the State of the Fleet Industry, a weekly video series produced by Automotive Fleet magazine. I'm Mike Antich, editor of Automotive Fleet, and today I'd like to examine what's occurring in the commercial fleet market for the week of September 28, 2020. And as we're 4 days away from the start of October, fleet managers are already starting to think very seriously about the 2021 calendar year and what is hopefully going to be the start of our post-COVID world. And among the observations and conversations that I'm having with fleet managers is that they and me personally are very surprised at how rapidly the pandemic has accelerated the changes that have already been occurring with the business models in the fleet industry. And the other observation is that the goalposts continually keep on changing and shifting further into the future. I was just listening to one analyst meeting on the airline industry, and they're now predicting that the airline industry is not going to be returning to pre-pandemic levels until 2023 to 2024. It's the first time I've heard that. Another newscast, Bloomberg, the hotel business predicted now not to be returning to pre-pandemic levels until 2025. So all of us were expecting this to be over with by fourth quarter of this year. It's obviously not turning out. However, I'm a little bit more optimistic. I personally don't believe that these returns to pre-pandemic level are going to take that long. People have short memories. I believe once a vaccine is viable and readily available, attitudes will quickly change. But even in a best case scenario, and using my scenario, we're still talking about something not happening till mid-2021 calendar year. So many of the companies internally in my conversations with fleet managers, nothing's off the table. They're discussing, the feasibility of making dramatic changes in how they interact with customers. And we have a proven model now with this whole shift over to virtual communications. But as they say, the devil's in the details. And as I've always said, we're in a very complex industry, and when you start making dramatic changes in one area, those ramifications are going to be rippling throughout the entire organization. So here's one good example. Many companies have multi-year purchasing agreements. When you start talking about making dramatic changes in the number of vehicles that you're operating or the number of people that have been furloughed that you will be bringing back or may not be bringing back, that's going to have a dramatic impact on your total order volume. And what's going to happen is some fleet managers are now expressing private concern as to whether they're going to be able to meet their contractual commitments for future model year ordering. Especially if there's dramatic decreases in terms of the size of the fleet. Another topic of conversation with fleet managers has been in regards to the OEMs and upfitters. And the OEMs have recovered from the shutdown, but it's a remarkable testament, and it'll really go down in the annals of automotive history on how they were able to go from a complete shutdown and in the space of 2 months start up the industry all over again. And I'm sure there were hiccups along the way, but nonetheless it was a remarkable transformation and restarting of an industry. And plus, fleet managers have been very complimentary about OEMs in fulfilling all 2020 model year orders that they had in their possession. This has resulted in a brief delay in starting to work on 2021 orders, but nonetheless, fleet managers are very complimentary in regards to that area. Another area is with the upfitters. The upfitters have done a terrific job. It looks like they've made their full recovery, and there's a lot of compliments to the upfitters in fulfilling all of the 2020 model year orders that they had on hand. And in fact, several of the larger upfitters actually stayed open during the economic shutdown, during the factory shutdown, in order to get caught up on their backlog of orders. Another area of concern and discussion among fleet managers, it's not anything new, but fleet managers are very appreciative of the amount of technology that's being put into vehicles, especially the types of vehicles that they're ordering for their fleets. especially in the way of safety equipment, but it is increasing the price. And fleet managers and others within their organizations are starting to pay attention to the uptick of prices that are going on with vehicles. And likewise, fleet managers have been very complimentary of their fleet management companies. They tell me the FMCs have just done an excellent job in maintaining service levels during this really unprecedented situation, and it's really helped solidify the relationships that they have with their fleet management companies. But there is another underlying issue that's happening, and that is that the fleet managers are really starting to experience increased pressure within their companies. And it's part of this ongoing issue where senior management really doesn't understand fleet management. And these senior managers are now putting demands on fleet managers, and they're no longer satisfied with the status quo. They're demanding their fleet managers come up with new ideas, fresh ideas to help address this unprecedented situation. And many of these fleet managers have approached their FMCs looking for recommendations and suggestions, but they're getting the same suggestions that have been issued in the past and that they've gotten over the years. And these fleet managers are kind of feeling this pressure. They're caught in between. And they're saying now, it's really contingent upon the FMCs and OEMs and other suppliers to start bringing them fresh ideas and technology to help address these demands that their management is putting on them. And then in terms of commercial fleets in general, it's another situation or it is a situation that we've discussed for many weeks now. There are many companies that are really thriving in this pandemic situation. Other companies are struggling and are going to take much longer to recover. But regardless of which camp you're in, whether you're thriving or whether you're struggling, cost control continues to be front and center for all of these companies. And cost control means more than just discounts from pricing. Their management is really demanding that they look at all internal processes, examine all the best practices that are out there, reducing inventory, ensuring more efficient utilization of assets, routing. Everything's on the board, on the table. And what's coming down to is fleet management really must innovate in order to continue to survive within these companies. That's the kind of pressure that's being put on them. Another area that's being examined from fleet managers is this whole area of cash conservation. And that's actually could be potentially good news if you're in the leasing business. A lot of fleets are either reducing or eliminating new vehicle orders due to budget constraints. Others are now considering perhaps a shift away from the purchase finance approach of acquisition and going to a lease scenario in order to help preserve capital and liquidity. Another area of concern is these ongoing layoffs. We're into the 7th month of this pandemic, and you're still hearing of major layoffs that are going to be occurring. One example is the airline industry. The airline industry is really threatening now and warning that they're going to be laying off tens of thousands of employees, some of which have been furloughed, others have not, because the past coronavirus relief package, which helped them maintain their payrolls, that's going to be expiring October 1. And there really hasn't been a new stimulus package that's put in the works to address this need. And it seems like a lot of the focus now on the legislative branch of government is focused on an appointment of a new justice of the Supreme Court. So that's a concern. October 1 is really end of this week. So that is really an issue, is this ongoing series of layoffs that still continue to happen. It's almost a case of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So another frequent topic of conversation with fleet managers revolves around the used vehicle marketplace, in particular the wholesale market and auction sales. And everyone's been pleasantly surprised by the state of this market. Although we've been all hearing the warnings about a softening of the market, we're starting to see glimpses of that. Whether that really materializes, we're going to have to wait and see. But everybody is anticipating some softening that's going to be happening. One common complaint has been with the transportation area and moving vehicles to market. This has been a big headache for fleet managers. Service is less than desirable. Costs are going up. Many of the companies that were in this market are no longer in this market as a result of the pandemic. But the focus now is on this post-COVID world, and hopefully it is a post-COVID world. But what's happening is all of us have an expectation that this is going to bring more clarity to what we're going to be doing in the future. If anything, it's bringing more questions. So with that, we'll have to wait till next week to discuss these in more detail. And so I'd like to conclude my presentation on the state of the commercial fleet market for the week of September 28th. I'd like to thank you for watching and see you next week.